Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB, and that's right, today we're going to look at the brand new Arturia DrumBrute Impact, which is this little fella here. This is the kind of little brother or sister of the full-blown DrumBrute. In many ways it's very similar, but it has a slightly cut down set of features. First one to notice really is it's got 10 analog voices as opposed to the higher count of the DrumBrute. It's also got less outputs. We've got the main output in mono plus 4 sub outputs. Plugging something into that removes it from the main mix. We've got kicks, snares, hats and the FM voice, more on that later. And the other thing that should really be emphasised is this is not like a cut down version of the DrumBrute, even though it has less voices. All the voices have actually been completely revoiced and designed by the guys at Arturia, making it a bit tougher and giving you a different palette of sounds. And the other thing that's been changed is obviously the price, because the DrumBrute Impact is significantly cheaper than the main DrumBrute. It's about 279 UK pounds, other currencies will scroll below, and that makes it one of the most affordable analog drum machines with this kind of many features. So essentially we've got the same concept in a sequencer, which is song mode, which allows you to chain up to 64 patterns, 4 banks of patterns, and then each pattern can be up to 64 beats in length. We go into step mode to program. We can record in step mode just by pressing the actual steps, or we can do a record, and we've got an unquantized record as well. The other main difference is instead of the resonant filter on the output, we've got distortion, analog distortion. We've got the same sort of roller concept here, though I think the hardware is slightly different at that. There's also another feature which is called colours, and what colours does is allow you to have sort of 2 variants of the sound. You've got the main sound and then the second sound, which is a sort of preset enhancement. You can't change the colour setting, which is a bit of a shame. That would be nifty if you could have kind of like almost 2 voices, but you can't. So let's just start with the kick here. Variable decay, we can get a nice long booming, and it goes right down low to up high. In fact, if we come and have a look at the scope, I've got it plugged into my usual for synth waves. You can see at its highest point, the fundamental is probably around about 65 Hertz. Taking it right down, it goes super low. This is below 30 Hertz, so you get a massive booming kick with lots of thwack to it. There's more because now we can also add the colour. So if I just take the decay down a little bit, if I take the decay down a bit anyway, and you can hear, you get quite a reasonable sort of 909 emulation, but it's a bit different to that. So we'll switch the colour on, and that changes the flavour of the kick as well. Adds a kind of more of a distorted kind of techno, gabber, whatever you call it. I don't know what the genres are called. So you get a bit more sort of drive and crunch in that kick as well. So you get quite a nice voicing there. Coming back, we then got the snare. Now the snare, there was a bit of a criticism of the original DrumBrute that the snare just wasn't really cutting it. It wasn't quite tough enough. They've toughened it up a little bit here, and you've got a bit more, it's like a hybrid between a 808 and a 909. The sort of noise quotient and this kind of funk. And with the colour layer on, it seems to sort of create a bit of extra pitching around the tone thing, almost like introducing a second pitch. So that, to my ears, definitely sounds better than the original and sort of a bit tougher. Obviously, we can take the snare out and maybe process it via compressor, EQ, that kind of stuff. Next thing, we've got this clap. Which is a kind of filter cue type noise. Haven't got much of that kind of like, you know, like you can get from a Simmons claptrap or something. It'd be nice to have a bit more kind of size to it. Like there were more people clapping, but it's certainly quite nice. And when you're messing around with this, it sounds quite good. Adding the colour to that seems to sort of increase the cue on the noise a little bit. Next up, toms, bibble bobble kind of toms. Tuning these tunes the pitch together. I'd like to see it maybe going a bit higher, no decay or anything on that. These sort of double up. We can record individual tracks depending on which type we're in. Switching the colour on for the tom kind of adds a bit of distortion and a tiny bit more decay. and you know, quite nice for an extra bit of harmonic flavour, but as I say, not quite enough decay. It'd be nice to have a little bit more decay on those tom sounds. Then we've got the cymbal, which is sort of your 808 style cymbal. But it's quite nice, you could do some stuff using it as a hi-hat. You can mess with the decay to get that thing. Adding the colour on that just seems to change the pitch of the ring mod aspect of it. Then we've got closed hi-hats. We can change the tone of that, which sounds a bit like a kind of slight filter mod. If we change to the colour layer, just seems to maybe add a bit of distortion. And then we've got open hi-hat, and the tone again so it changes the pitch. The tone affects both the tones of the closed and open. Then finally we've got this FM voice, which is kind of interesting. Which we can add the carrier mod. The carrier pitch has changed here, and then the modulation, which is kind of useful. It's an interesting sound and something that you can certainly add an extra pitch element, and you've got a separate output for that as well. One thing that is missing though is the rim shot, and the rim shot I find is quite useful in an analog drum machine because you know, if you can obviously take the sync output of this because it's got a sync output as well as USB and over MIDI and two MIDI ports as well for clocking and playing the voices from external point. But what I like to do, or what a lot of people like to do, is to take one of the drum voices, perhaps they're not using like a rim shot, and use that to trigger an external sequencer or arpeggiator. So you might have a simple sequence pattern, but you're triggering it in unusual clock divisions by just programming a pattern in. I found I could do that with the FM voice. You do lose the FM voice, so you had to turn the decay right down, take the mod pitch down, and carry a pitch up and turn it right up. But then I was able to trigger an external clock source and advance the sequences, you know, in an arrhythmic fashion, which is kind of cool. So that's the sounds. Like I say, they are a bit tougher. I mean, it's still, I guess the thing is, you know, the cymbals are the cymbals, so you're kind of stuck with those. If you wanted more of a 9090 type thing, you're out of luck here. It's very much in the kind of 808 sort of vibe, and there's not a massive amount of flavour between those sounds, though the hi-hat's tone does help and the colour does help. Incidentally, you can sequence the colour. There's a colour track as well, so you can sequence the colour actually using the step sequencer as well, because obviously if you're in step mode, the usual way that you would do this, if we just say there's a bass drum, if I play a pattern here, I'm not sure what's going to happen. You see I can record in real time, or I can just go into step mode and drop them in that way, which is kind of what you'd expect from a drum machine like this. Patterns can be up to 64 beats long, but you can also do a polyrhythm side of things as well. So pressing shift and going into polyrhythm means you can have different track lengths for each of the tracks, so you can create these kind of interesting moving patches and rhythms. And again, you know, the amount of steps that you might have, if we come back out of polyrhythm mode, I could say, at the moment this is currently 2 bars long, but I could make it 4 bars long and then change the resolution by pressing shift and these buttons. This is in 16th revolution or triplets or 32s or whatever. So, you know, you've got all of that usual stuff that you can do. So that means you can do 12-step stuff for 6/8 and 3/4 and all of those sort of things as well. So there's some quite complex polyrhythmic stuff you can do. You'd have your kick on 1 and your hat on 3 and your whatever on 7 or 12 or 18 or 63. It's entirely up to you, but it does mean that you can get in there and do that kind of stuff. So there is a cool thing that I could do. If I just take this pattern, I go to erase, hit pattern, and then I've cleared the pattern out. Pressing shift, I can go in and out of Quantize mode, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll start with in Quantize mode. I've got the metronome on, which is here, kind of useful. I can turn the level of that, so that's really handy because quite often you don't get the starting point for that. Yeah, that's quantized, so that works nicely. But what I'll do is I'll just erase that again. And then I'm going to go into unquantize mode, shift and quantize. And now when I record, it won't quantize to the steps. And I'll try and play out of time. Shouldn't be too difficult. So you can hear there, I've actually got more of a sort of human feel, certainly on that track, but I could change that all up if I wanted to. It's worth mentioning, there are a few other features which are common to the other one. I'll come out of unquantized mode, we'll go to hi-hats, let's put some kick drums in, just do that on the step mode kick. So we'll just go one and something like that. So then we just got a 1 bar pattern, which is pretty out there. So let's get the hi-hats in. Now obviously we can swing the entire lot, or we can just swing the selected track, very similar to the BeatStep Pro. Starting to get pretty jazzy, I think you'll agree. Other things that we can do is we can actually shift individual parts and put rolls in. So there's a few more features here. So let me just turn the tom down so that the rest of the stuff is in. Take the metronome off, put some, so let's see, we're in, quantize mode. It's all pretty cool, but what we can do is we can hold a step and then actually shift that step, so we can actually move these around in time. We can also add roll steps in different and I noticed that this is something you'll notice, so if I take that out, I did find that it does rather kind of jump to the different roll positions. I'm not sure whether that's just because it's hot and my fingers are sweaty, or whether it's just it's a design issue. I'm not quite sure. We can also, if we keep going, we can add random to individual tracks, or take the random down, put the random on that track. As you can tell, this is sort of fairly abstract step program, but I'm just trying to show you what some of these things do. The other thing that is actually worth mentioning is, you'd think with all of these knobs on, you'd kind of want to be able to record these parameter moves. You know, we're so used to seeing parameter lock on sequencers these days, but that's sadly not the case on here. It's very much a hands-on thing, and you have to kind of like perform with it and then maybe record your output rather than anything else. And that's a shame. I mean, I guess, you know, this is a very affordable drum machine, and it is analog, so applying kind of parameter locks to all of those things would have added to the cost, but I think it would have been a really great thing to do if they could have possibly done it. So just take a look at the MIDI control center, which I've got a version which is running with Impact. We can graphically see representations of all of the patterns, and obviously we can tweak all of those if we wish as well, which is kind of handy. Device settings, probably the most interesting one is we can change the sync in and out port settings to be 1 pulse, 2 pulse, which is Korg Volca, so you can sync them directly to Volcas, 24 ppq, 48 ppq. We've also got the ability to change the MIDI input drum map, which has all the basic voices plus all the coloured voices as well, so you've got the variants all across a keyboard, so you can play them externally if you wish. A couple of other things, we've got mute and solo buttons. So if I play a pattern here, going into mute, I can set up a set of mutes, and then hitting it just takes me back to the full pattern. Same with solo, if I've got solo my bass drum, and both of these will return, and they also memorise where you were in the drop down, so it's quite useful for perhaps creating a sort of drop down and build up sections where it's just you hit a button or another button and you've got preset kind of mixes that you can get to very, very quickly. So let's take a look at the distortion now. I think we've got a pattern here which is going to show you a little bit more of what we can do with the performance side of things, and also we can have a look at the distortion. So if we just take these down, we've got the kick drum, And I'm using the decay on this to kind of create this nice sort of swing feel with the length. Now we can start to look at what the distortion will do. And really can start to really crunch it up. And it goes quite extreme. Add the colour into these. I mean really, let's just turn the colour on all of them. So, you know, backing it off a bit just gives that nice bit of burn. And one thing I didn't mention, actually, I don't think I did the cowbell, did I? So, yes, there is a cowbell, although that's it. The decay doesn't really make any difference to that, but if you need that cowbell sound, I guess it's a bit like an 808 one, although it'd be nice to be able to go bing, but hey, that extra voice. I would have preferred if that was a rim shot myself, but, you know, there you go. Just coming back again, we'll just explore the looper slash roll a little bit more. And if we turn that into a roller, that'll work on individual instruments. So in roller mode, it's on the selected instrument. In looper mode, it's on the entire drum sort of pattern type of thing. So another thing we need to look at is song mode, and there are 16 songs and you can store up to 64 patterns in them. It's quite straightforward. I'll just erase this song here and I go into record mode. Oops, hit that, done that. Now I'm going to go into record mode and I'm in pattern. So I'm going to go twice round number 13. Then go to my fill, then twice round the next one. So now my song has twice round to, so let's see what it sounds like. So we've got pattern 13, twice round will be 4 bars, 3, 4, 2, so then I've got my fill, once, then second pattern, twice round again, and then back to my original part, which will be twice round, and then we'll come into my fill, just coming up. So, you know, with a bit of careful construction and thoughts, you could actually create an entire set around this. And then the whole thing is really designed for you to have hands-on feel. I mean, I think, you know, those of you perhaps looking for something which we can record all those parameter locks and P-locks in, I'm afraid you're out of luck. Overall, though, I'd say the DrumBrute Impact actually is quite a nice little machine. It's got a decent tough sound, it's affordable, yeah, it has limitations, and I suppose the only real thing is going to be, you know, will you get on with those sounds? You know, are those sounds going to be something you're going to use again and again and again in your productions, or are you maybe just going to use the drum, the kick drum and a couple of other voices? And I suppose that's the thing, you know, slight limitation of an analog drum machine is that the voices are what you have. So perhaps I would have liked to have seen any drum machine, not just, you know, an affordable drum machine, but with either parameter lock recording or slightly more variants of the actual the sounds themselves, so you can really take it into places that are outside of your immediate kind of point of reference, because, you know, unfortunately those are the limitations of the parameters that you've got with. So the Arturia DrumBrute Impact is available very soon. It's not quite in the shops now. Price is around about 279 quid. Street price may well drop a little bit below that, and it's worth remembering that the DrumBrute Impact is actually really affordable. I mean, compared to what you get, the actual DrumBrute, which is considerably more expensive, and maybe the other things that are a little bit cheaper, you know, the amount of features and the quality of the sounds, because they do sound good, that frequency range is really big, then you're going to be hard pressed to find anything that does analog drum machine type stuff at this price. So from that point of view, it's a bit of a bargain, and Arturia should be commended for getting all of this into such a small and affordable unit. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube to see more of our content. That was the Arturia DrumBrute Impact. See you next time.